Welcome to the Lead Pedal Podcast with your host, Bruce Outridge, where he talks all things trucking. Now let's get rolling.
Hey everybody, how are we doing today? Welcome to another edition of the Lead Pedal Podcast. I'm your host, Bruce Outridge. This is episode number 1117, and we're going to give you a recap of the DriverCheck Fitness for Duty Summit that happened back in October, at the end of October there. And this thing was very informative. It was all done online this year, and we're going to tell you all about it right after this, so stay tuned. Hey folks, you know that Bison raised their rates at the beginning of the year for owner-operators and for company drivers. And I got to tell you, it has been so successful that they wanted to let you know exactly how much their drivers are making. That's right, they have significantly increased the base rates for their teams. So owner-operator teams can earn up to $360,000 per year. That's right, you heard me say that right, $360,000 per year. Company team drivers can earn up to $120,000 per year per driver. That's right, per driver. That's some big numbers, right? They have a wide variety of Canada-only dedicated team positions available for folks to choose from, and Bison has a steady freight to keep the teams moving. So if you want to significantly increase your base rates, then you want to make sure that you sign up for that. Now, Bison has also increased the base rates for owner-operators. Owner-operators running Canada-only can earn up to $185,000 per year. They have a wide variety of Canada-only positions for owner-operators to choose from, and Bison has a steady freight to keep the owner-operators moving. So where can you learn more about all of these things? I mean, you know, $360,000 for owner-operator teams, $120,000 for company driver teams, and owner-operators running by themselves can earn $185,000 per year. Canada only, folks, that is incredible. Well, the best place to go is to go to bisondriving.com. And while you're there, while you're talking to the team, would you let them know that you heard about it from the Lead Pedal Podcast? Hey, good luck there. You're going to make some great money working for one of the safest fleets in North America. All right, so let's talk about making your workplace safe with DriverCheck. And that's right, DriverCheck did their Fitness for Duty Summit, and it's a great event. I've been to two of them. They've held, I think, three. This was, I believe, their sixth annual. I'm trying to see. Forget what number they're on. Seventh annual. Oh, so this was the sixth. 2023 was sixth. Seventh annual is coming up in October 22nd, 2024. So, this was a great event. I've been to a couple. They try to go out west and then down east. So I've been to a couple of the Toronto events, and it's always been a really good really informative. Now, it's geared to basically human resources professionals. They talk about workplace safety, drug and alcohol testing, cannabis. But they were talking about COVID back when COVID was there. And so there's a lot of good information. A lot of drivers may think, you know what, it doesn't apply to me. Well, you know what? It does affect you because everything affects you. And just to give you an idea of the agenda they had set out, which is really, really well done, they had redefining the rules, cannabis in the workplace, assessing the post-legalization era and shaping tomorrow's work environment. That was with Dr. Melissa Snyder-Adler, and she is, I have to say, one of the best speakers I've seen. I've seen her presentation, probably the same one, a number of times, but she's very humorous. She presents very well, and it's always fun to see her present. So she was offering some strategies in the workplace to maintain a safe workplace and that kind of thing. And then they had Dr. Bill Howitt, a hack for becoming a psychological safe leader. Suzanne Sawatsky on waking up to fatigue factors in the workplace. Putting back the curtain, a laboratory introduction, process quality, and reliability. This is how the drug testing goes through. That was with Luke Hoy. And Christine Quick had real cases, real solutions, navigating employee performance and absenteeism with medical consideration. So what happens when someone's absent and has to come back to work? So you talked about that. Driving safety and beyond, accessing impairment risk in the workplace. That was with Dr. Jonathan Davids, and he always does a great job as well. He was the moderator. Then, of course, they had PJ Barkley from Empirica as the CEO of Empirica. He was a panelist. Sheldon Wheeler, the Director of Safety and Compliance with Herb Transport, was a panelist. And Lindsay Toll, Training and Development Section Manager, City of Ottawa Transportation Services for OC Transpo, was also on the panel. They were discussing a number of issues in the workplace. Sponsors were Empirica, PMTC, Sparkwood Group, and of course, Lead Pedal Media. We were a media sponsor for them, so it was good to see that. This was very interesting, and you always get some information out of it. And I was surprised, and I was logged in all day. I had to cut it short at the very end because I had another event afterwards, but stayed till pretty well the whole day, and it was very informative. They did it well. They did all through Zoom with a couple breaks in between, and it's very hard to keep people engaged on Zoom, but the presenters did a really good job. So I'm just going to play a couple of the snippets from the conference for you. This is Dr. Jonathan David's leading us off, and then there's a couple snippets to do with cannabis in the workplace and workplace issues, fatigue, that I thought may be important for you, just to give you an idea of the kind of performance, the presentations that they had. So let's get on with it, and we'll learn more about what went on at the conference. Here we go.
Great to be here today. My name is Jonathan Davids. I'm the Corporate Medical Director here at DriverCheck. And for better or worse, I will be your host and moderator for today's sessions. A little bit about our Fitness for Duty Summit. This is our 6th annual summit. DriverCheck puts these on each year to inform and educate stakeholders involved in employee health and safety on current topics that impact safety in the workplace. Past attendees have been health and safety professionals, occupational health nurses, physicians, other clinicians, HR and labor relations professionals, legal advisors, business leaders, and union representatives. Today, we have an exciting lineup of speakers covering all manner of fitness for duty topics for our over 300 registered attendees here today. So on behalf of Maggie Dennett, DriverCheck's president, the rest of our executive leadership group, and all our fantastic employees that make things happen here every day, I want to extend a warm welcome to all of you. Of course, none of this happens without a lot of work behind the scenes. So big shout out to Sue Floyd, DC's Director of Marketing, Stephen Cooper, DC's Marketing Manager, and the rest of their great team who have helped put together today's events. Thank you. We also wouldn't be able to do this without the help of our sponsors. I'd like to thank Empirica, Private Motor Truck Council of Canada, Sparkwood Group, Lead Pedal Media, and Canadian Occupational Safety.
Legalization, like sort of across the whole board from the pre until the commercialization, 475% increase in cannabis-involved traffic injury. So in the risk of having cannabis involved in a traffic injury. Comparing alcohol, that same time, it was 9.4% increase, so much more so with cannabis. And when we look at pre-legalization, not the whole period of time, but just from pre-legalization comparing to commercialization, there was still a 245% increase. So it kind of, we take from that to mean that there was certainly an increase during that time, but it may have been even more substantial at the very beginning of legalization. So what about the workplace? So there were some, we don't have a lot of studies, unfortunately, in the workplace, but this is one. This was basically taking a look at surveys of individuals who work, and they looked at workplace injuries and cannabis use and how they are related. So the individuals in this who took part in this had to be over 18. They had to be working at least 15 hours, and a company that had 5 or more employees or people working there. They defined a workplace injury as in the last year, whether or not there's been an incident that resulted in harm to themselves while they were working. And they defined workplace use of cannabis as use within 2 hours before work, use at work or on breaks while you're at work. And then they also looked at both safety sensitive and non-safety sensitive work. So what did they find? You can see here when we look at, did you use cannabis over the last year? And when did you use it? 64% or almost 65% was no use in the last year. But a combined 35.3% was, and this is just safety sensitive, the ones when they divided it out into safety sensitive jobs, 35.3% had used in the last year or had disclosed actually workplace use, meaning within 2 hours of work or during work. So the numbers of people using cannabis in this particular survey who work in safety sensitive jobs is actually higher than that average that we saw across Canada of 27%. Okay. There are many reasons for that, but again, we're not talking about cause and effect here, so I don't want to speculate, but there is some thoughts that there is an increased work in certain industries, increased use of cannabis. So what did they find? They found that there was a twofold increase in the risk of workplace injury of those who used cannabis, what they called workplace use, again, 2 hours before or during work. Okay, so that's, not surprising. If you've used cannabis in that short period of time, we know there are impairment risks, but that did equate to an increase in injuries in this particular study. And when they actually compared any use of cannabis in the last year and workplace injury, there was no statistically significant difference, meaning that there didn't appear to be the increased risk of injury in this particular study for any use of cannabis. It was only in the short period of time. Now, does that mean that there is no risk if you use outside of the 2 hours? I'm going to say no, because what you can see from this is non-workplace use may have been used 5 hours before, 12 hours before, 12 days before, 5 months before, because it was only in the last year and it was outside in that parameter. So if we were to break down that group into smaller components and then get an idea, it may help to determine where that risk changes, but they didn't do that. So I can't speculate on that, but I just want everyone to be clear that this does not mean there's no risk if you use 3 hours before or 6 hours before or 12 hours. We just don't have that information. And as a whole, any cannabis use did not appear to increase that risk. But again, we haven't defined what that means there.
Because we can think about how being really bored can sort of bring on those feelings of fatigue, even if we're not tired to start with. Safety sensitive work, and I define that really basically as anything you can get hurt doing if you're not doing it properly. Do you have a lack of breaks for people, resting areas, etc.? And then just other environmental factors like high risk, high stress, chaotic environments, noise, vibration, working in remote locations, and then some demographic issues. So things like workers over 40, which makes it much more difficult to be managing shift work. All right, what do you guys think? Some, most, or all? All. I'm seeing some all coming in. All right. Yeah, lots of all. Okay, we're hitting the money on these ones. Some. Okay. When you have those kinds of risk factors in the work that you do, you know that you're seeing the impact in terms of safety, in terms of health, in terms of productivity. You're also seeing it in terms of workplace errors. And I'm going to give you a quick example. An organization that prior to me working with them had gone through a shutdown. So they had a turnaround project, 24 days of all night or all days, 12-hour shifts. They came back from the extended turnaround, and one of their very experienced supervisors gave the directions on the chemicals to mix going into the plant, and he messed up. It shut the plant down for 2 additional weeks. And I mean, these guys, it's over $1 million a day when that plant is shut down. So it was a really costly workplace error, but you can recognize that was very likely due to fatigue. It has an impact on things like our safety culture, and we know it impacts things like our business values. And in particular, we see a lack of fatigue management impacting things like attraction and retention. And in today's tight labor market, that's a big one. But it'll also impact things like your overtime costs, your union relationships, your client relationships, and just overall the contentment of your workforce. We can try to quantify this to some level. So I'm using a tool called the National Science Council's Fatigue Cost Calculator. And for that, I just put in a fictitious organization, about 100 employees in the transportation industry. I said they had pretty high risk in relation to fatigue, so those factors that we just looked at. And it says that on average, on an annual basis, that company is losing about $166,000 in relation to costs of fatigue. And it notes those occurring because of things like absenteeism, as well as decreased productivity. Now, it's an American tool, so this healthcare number is probably not accurate for a Canadian market, but it doesn't calculate anything in relation to workplace errors or safety and safety incidents. So the numbers are probably relatively accurate. And these research-based numbers also say that if you are proactive and you manage your fatigue within your organization, you can get some of those costs reduced and have some potential savings depending on how much action you take in terms of managing fatigue.
Driver for motivation. And so what I'm trying to do today is to introduce a concept around leadership within the context of psych safety, because leaders are a protective factor. But ultimately what I'm trying to coach, as you listen to me today, is to be considering the possibility the workplace can have a tremendous impact and impact in the employee experience. But what we have to understand is we need to stop random acts of wellness. We have so many folks I work with that are so smart and brilliant, but they've confused strategic planning all the time. Many people think strategic planning is a laundry list of a bunch of tasks and planning. They forget what problem you're trying to solve for the future of work. Being able to mobilize a sustainable workforce who want to come to work, who voluntarily come with purpose to do their best every day, is becoming a more complex challenge, especially in this world where we're having, in our society in Canada, the workforces are changing with massive ESLs, with the population changing its expectations. And so what I want to do is say to you the following. If we can think that leaders can be a protective factor, we as influencers, if you're in a position you can influence the employee experience, this conversation will be relevant, is because what's happening is stress is killing a lot of employees and killing a lot of leaders. World Health Organization has stat ahead, whether you read it or not, is that, lots of folks are in hypercorticism, which basically means you'll hear this word burnout. We talk about lots of people burnt out, and it's kind of, you get a little, as a clinician, kind of nerve-wracking, because if you're telling someone you're burnt out, you still got some fight in your pants. But the reality is you could be very fatigued, you could be very frustrated, but once someone goes into apathy and gets into that clinical burnout, it's different. What I want to be able to suggest to you is the following. The idea of creating a workplace that we can create more positive emotion for old traditional command and control leaders, kind of nerve-wracking, because they think if we're nice to everybody, they'll do whatever the hell they want to. And there was a kind of a pendulum switch that people are observing from how we parent. I'm 60 years old now. My father was quite okay with me not going, getting a hockey stick for 6 months. My son, who played competitive hockey, like 6 minutes. So we have a lot of society changes happening. So this concept, if you're not familiar with it, psych safety it's not about creating a place where everyone's happy and does whatever they want. It's not about just creating no explanations or no, you can do what you want. We have to be super soft. The idea of psych safety is creating a place where people actually can learn, and we can hold people accountable. And we can actually start to create a place we can move towards a North Star. Very much what CSA talks about is the goal, the North Star, the strategic challenge, the thing we're trying. How do we create a place that reduces mental harm and promote mental health? And what we can do is leaders are a protective factor. In the world of psychological health and safety, if you think about the fish tank, which I mentioned earlier, well, so we have these things that are called psychosocial factors. Well, that's your environment. And there's three things that happen. It's how we organize work, the interpersonal experience you have with other human beings, and your equipment and your confidence in your equipment you have and the conditions you work in. Well, let's just slow it down for a minute. I'm a leader. I can pay attention to the employee's experience. So how we organize work, if I care about my human beings, and then I'm clear what are psychosocial factors, how I organize work, which often is work demand, that can be either a drain or a charge. So as a leader, I can be making micro decisions all day around psychosocial factors that can be a drain or a charge. Now, if we think about this, if I'm not paying attention to the psychosocial factors, how work's organized, drain or charge, or if I have someone who works remotely, we know the 70%, if you look at Ernst & Young's recent research, is feeling isolated, not connected. Well, that can become a drain. Well, frequency, duration, intensity of a drain creates strain on our physiology. And put that over time, that can increase risk for psychosocial hazards, frustrations, tachomas, mistakes, other type of compensation behaviors, but it also can increase the risk for people to be looking for self-soothing behaviors. The protective factor that employers have an opportunity to do is to step back and start saying, okay, if we have these things called leaders, and traditionally many leaders become what they were role modeled. In my early days as a leader in the early 2000s, before this whole psych safety came, cups would kind of move around tables pretty aggressively in a boardroom. We were different. And what happened in a boardroom may not be what you want to happen on the floor. But the world was different.
Hey folks, just wanted to let you know about DriverCheck, and they are Canada's fitness for duty experts. That's right, their priority is to make sure that you have a safe and healthy workplace. They've been around since 1996, and they are a leading provider of workplace medical testing and assessments in the country. You know what? They're involved in the transportation industry, oil and gas, aviation, rail, mining, construction, healthcare, manufacturing, forestry, and much more. You know what? They specialize in drug and alcohol testing, occupational health services, medical staffing, and injury management programs. You know what? Make sure you ask about their Fitness for Duty Summit, which happens every year. And you can learn more about all of their programs and services at DriverCheck.ca. And make sure you tell them that the Lead Pedal podcast sent you. Thanks for listening. All right, so that was a little bit about DriverCheck, and so let's get back to. So that was some good information there. Again, very important information. Drug testing, drug use is up. I think if I could summarize the event for you here, very non-medical, non-technical. Drug use is up, and so they're looking at other ways to see are people really fit? There was some really interesting work talking about that. Fatigue is big in the way that their cognitive testing is now becoming a big thing. And you're seeing it in other places. You're seeing it when you go to employers for road tests. You're seeing it at schools when they're training. So they're starting to really see how fit people are before they get to the workplace. And so drivers need to be ready for that. It's going to be part of the new world, if you will. So do that. So anyway, if you get a chance, if you're a human resources person or somebody that's looking for information on DriverCheck, their next Fitness for Duty, you mark this date in your calendar if you want. The next one's going to be held in Calgary, Alberta on October 22nd, 23rd, 2024. That's going to be their 7th annual Fitness for Duty Summit. So they're going to be out there. They're getting some details fixed for that. So make sure that you check that out. I got to tell you, it's one of those places, it's always full, right? They always pack out. And even on this virtual one, they had like 300-400 people registered, which is amazing for a virtual conference. But you know what? That's where you really get some of those answers. You can go online, you can read medical stuff, and sometimes it, depending on how affluent you are with that, you'd go, okay, I understand, or I don't. But I find there is a place to really get some really good questions answered. Dr. Melissa Snyder-Adler and Dr. Jonathan Davids, I've met both of them. They're very easy to talk to. They're very willing to help out with a question. And so you can find out that. But if you need stuff on an ongoing basis, I'd reach out to them at drivercheck.ca. But they also got services and resources that you can get yourself all settled in for and make sure that you understand what's going on for the future. So well done, Driver Check. Great job. And I think everybody's going to really enjoy next year's in person in Calgary, Alberta. All right, get set for that. Mark it in your dates right now. It's already on their website, so it's a go. You probably got to find a place to hold it. Anyway, hey, how do you know what's going on with Driver Check and going on with us? Well, you know what? Follow us on our socials. That's the easiest way to do that. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube. Find a podcast on any of your popular podcast platforms. Driver Check also sponsors our Monday night trivia night, so check that out. That's always fun as well. We play for charity, so they're helping out again, and you'll see them involved all through the transportation industry. So no matter what industry you're in, if you need help with drug and alcohol testing, Driver Check's the place to go. Check them out at drivercheck.ca and check us out, and we will catch you later. Make sure you check out Lead Pedal Radio. That's right, mixcloud.com/Lead Pedal Radio for a lot of fun, entertaining segments, that kind of thing. All right, my friends, we will talk to you later. Be good out there, and bye for now.